I'm CBS 19 Chief Meteorologist Travis Koshko for Seaville 107.5 and 1260 WCHV.
Joe Thomas in the morning, WCHV time 7:37, visiting with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who was just commenting on my raspiness. He said, doctor, it hurts when I do this. This is when you say don't do this.
Exactly. You got to take care of yourself first.
The American Islamic Forum for Democracy, as well as the author for the Battle for the Soul of Islam. And I was thinking about that the other day as we were talking about you being here at CPAC and one of the speakers. There's also, I think, a battle for the soul of the American culture, the culture of we're all just individuals, we're free to do what we want, because I think, in a zeal for security, I think there are a lot of people, more and more of them every day, are willing to give up that liberty because it might not impact them directly.
Our panel that I'm speaking on today is about the Third World War and what do we do? What's the strategy? What's the lens? And Peter Drucker has an old quote that he said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And there's no doubt that we see so many different shifts in culture that we can sit and plan, talk about how to defeat the global jihad. But if America doesn't get what we are, what our roots are, what our Constitution means, and teach our kids what Americanism is all about, if we lose that messaging, as we saw with the president's executive order, it was written fine, but the messaging was such that the courts snuffed it because the messaging appeared to be anti-Muslim, and really it wasn't. It was simply to protect our national security.
I think MSNBC is still reporting on it as the Muslim ban. So it's
even though the word Muslim and ban is not in the executive order.
Why would facts bother anyone in the media? Dr. Jasser, let me ask you then, because one of the things that I feel like we're struggling with, terrorists will use what you hold dear against you. They did it on September 11th with our air travel and our facility. I think, and last time you were on with us, I was inundated with emails from folks that said, Joe, you're a useful idiot, all these other things, that Dr. Jasser is lying to you because that's what the caliphate tells Muslims to do, is lie to you. So when he says there are folks who are hoping to reform and be American Muslims, they're lying to you because that's what they're told to. And I feel like that's almost psychological terrorism, because, once you go into that rabbit hole, I don't know how you come back from it. Help me with that.
Well, I mean, the lying part, pandering is what taqiyya is, right? So people have known me for years. They know what we're doing. If we're inconsistent, it will expose itself. What's the strategy for America against a quarter of the world's population, which are Muslim, so 1.6 billion? If you think they're all lying, then we're entered into some eternal, never-ending battle for the world. And I think ultimately, why can't Islam go through what America went through in rejecting theocracy? That's the lens I hope people can look through this and begin to work with Muslims that share our American exceptional ideas to be free. Why can't we do that? I think it can be a very Muslim journey.
One of the thoughts I had in ruminating on this, Dr. Jasser, was that you talk about a quarter of the world's population are Muslim. In that population, how many of them are so hardcore, into the caliphate that they still believe that it's okay to lie to non-Muslims in order to achieve your goal, versus the ones that don't? Because we see more Muslims being killed by Muslims in the Shia and Shiite terrorism.
Listen, that's a great question, because it's not just the militants that are 5 to 10%, and even that is 100 million people if you're talking 5 to 10%. Right. The underbelly of that is global political movements. They won elections in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Iran, initially the revolution. So these are movements of probably 30% of Muslims have been shown to be Islamist sympathizers. Not all violent, but the underbelly of that is the political platforms of these Islamic parties. That's why we need to work with secular groups, those who reject theocracy platforms. And if we get it wrong, we're getting whiplash now because we have an administration that's finally addressing the problem. So a lot of folks with whiplash say, well, maybe we shouldn't trust any of them. I would tell you, let's start to thread the needle. work against the radicals and also against the Islamists, who are not always radical, but also, it's like in the Cold War. Would we have worked with the Italian or Cuban communists because they're not in the Soviet sphere? No, we wouldn't have. We understood that they share that common socialist, anti-capitalist, anti-freedom mentality. Islamists will never be our allies. It's a huge movement. All I can tell your listeners is, remember, the majority of Muslims reject Islamists. If Iran had elections today, the Green Revolution would win an election against the theocrats in Iran.
Well, and that's one of the things that I hope we can continue on, because in this battle for the soul of America and the battle for the soul of Islam, I think both parties would win if that's the case. Dr. Jasser, I know you're very busy here on Radio Row, and I appreciate your time. Political Islam is, it seems like, the more I talk to folks, the use of this faith as a political tool is the thing we need to fight against the most. What would be one of your best answers for a tool to watch out for it, or a litmus test?
I would say look at our Muslim reform movement. We have a declaration, a 2-page simple declaration signed by 15 leading groups in the U.S., Canada, and Europe. If Muslims can adhere to those beliefs and the rejection of the caliphate, rejection of the Islamic State and violent jihad, the belief in being for the equality of men and women, for secular governance, for the individual rights of people, then those would be Muslims we should work with if they sign this declaration and believe in it. If they don't believe in it, then they're really not part of the solution.
Dr. Jasser, so much thank you for your visit with us. AIFdemocracy.org, correct?
Yes, AIFdemocracy.org.
Have great speak today.
Thank you. Anytime. Appreciate it.